Super Star Wars. Now that's a name I've not heard in a long time. Long time. Okay, not really. I barely replayed the game to make this review. For the uninitiated, Super Star Wars is an action platformer released back on the Super Nintendo in 1992. The game was developed by longtime developer Sculptured Software, which is most notable for licensed games and ports of popular arcade and PC games to consoles. Based on Star Wars: A New Hope, Sculptured Software takes us on a 16-bit representation of that original Star Wars classic. While the game takes plenty of liberties with the source material, Super Star Wars remains a challenging game that can still be fun to revisit to this day. It is a dark time in the galaxy. The Galactic Empire has reigned with an iron fist and has completed the construction of its ultimate weapon, the Death Star. Rebels against the Empire have managed to steal the plans for the Death Star, hoping to find a weakness. Passing the plans off to Princess Leia, her ship comes under attack while searching for Obi-Wan Kenobi, one of the last remaining Jedi. Hiding the plans within the droid R2-D2, who manages to escape with another droid, C-3PO, Leia is captured by Darth Vader for a fate unknown. Both droids find their way into the possession of Luke Skywalker, a young moisture farmer who must then face his destiny. Based on the events of A New Hope, players will take control of Luke as he gets drawn into the rebel cause. As the game progresses, Han Solo and Chewbacca become additional playable character options. The story of Super Star Wars is told to players through in-game text-based cutscenes with pixel art. While the game's levels stray wildly from scenes of the movie for most of its playtime, players are still treated to a decent retelling of the first iconic Star Wars tale, culminating with the final showdown against the Death Star. Super Star Wars is an action platformer with gameplay that involves running, jumping, sliding, and shooting your way to victory. Levels are usually finished by reaching an endpoint, but many also include an end-level boss fight. The levels are a good length and are challenging, but manage to feel fair, with cheap hits and deaths kept mostly to a minimum. 4 places come to my mind where things can be questionable. Throughout the story, you will visit iconic locations like the Dune Sea, Mos Eisley, and the Death Star. The inside of the hulking Jawa sandcrawler is also prominently featured. While most of the game is set in a desert, the variety of locations helps the game feel fresh. Your standard weapon in Super Star Wars is the blaster. The blaster is a rapid-fire projectile weapon that lets you take out enemies across the screen. While being fired, your character becomes stationary, allowing for 8-way aiming to better hit enemies at different positions. Being unable to move while shooting is not usually a good thing, but it works for Super Star Wars. You can still move and fire at the same time by jumping, which is incredibly useful when you power up your blaster. Blaster upgrades can be found in every level to enhance its power and capabilities. One of these stages is a homing missile that makes quick work of almost every enemy the game has to offer. Finding 4 of these power-ups grants you the Plasma Blaster, and it feels awesome to use it to rain destruction down on the Empire. In some situations though, taking a death to reset your blaster so you can get back to homing missiles can make the game easier to enjoy. While Luke will always start with the basic blaster, Han and Chewie start with the first upgrade, making them stronger to use after a death. It also doesn't hurt that Chewie has a longer starting life bar. Halfway through Super Star Wars, you get the signature weapon of the Jedi, the lightsaber. While this seems like it would be better than the normal assortment of blasters, it sadly isn't. The lightsaber only deals minor damage to enemies and puts you closer to harm, resulting in more damage for the average player. It can be more useful for some boss fights, but again it puts you up against enemies that will deal more damage to you than you to it. By sticking with the blaster for these situations, you generally apply knockback to the enemy, thus dealing damage and keeping yourself from harm. Thankfully, you can swap between the lightsaber and blaster anytime, so you can see which gameplay style you prefer. In addition to your main weapons, Super Star Wars will occasionally grant you a thermal detonator after killing an enemy. Detonators wipe everything from the screen, making them extremely useful. Unfortunately, you only have a limited time to use it before it disappears, so the use case might not always be the best. Other power-ups such as health, score multipliers, life bar extensions, and invincibility can also be dropped when dispatching an enemy to help you progress through the game. Numerous secret weapon power-ups can be obtained by farming enemies or exploring specific locations. If you find yourself having trouble making it through the game, a hidden 1-up cave can also be found about halfway through. You could farm this cave until you reach 99 lives if desired. Boss fights are interesting inclusions throughout Super Star Wars, and many liberties have been taken on top of the already interesting enemy decisions. Right in the first level, Luke has a showdown with the Sarlacc pit from Return of the Jedi. There are additional weird inclusions like the Death Star tractor beam generator. I thought Obi-Wan just powered that sucker down. You remember that long-necked monster from the chess-like game R2 and Chewie played in the movie? Well, now it is the boss of the Mos Eisley Cantina, and one that can ruin your playthrough often. Seriously, if you don't have plasma for this fight, be prepared for a bad time. Various Imperial droids and an assault carrier round out the list of oddities. While they may be weird, most are at least enjoyable fights overall, if a bit easy, with only a few complete stinkers like the aforementioned generator fight. While a majority of the game has you progressing on foot, a few vehicle levels are included to mix things up. These levels take advantage of the Super Nintendo's Mode 7 capabilities to provide a pseudo 3D gameplay experience. While cool in theory, for Luke's land speeder it is easier to just strafe left or right to dispatch the required number of enemies. Once in the X-Wing, however, you will need to master the art of the dodge if you wish to survive. Hitting towers during this sequence is a quick way to lose a life. The final Death Star trench run, however, feels like a throwback to the classic Star Wars arcade title where you are tasked with shooting down TIE fighters and incoming projectiles for a set period. This last part of the game is my favorite of the vehicle levels. The audio journey through Super Star Wars is a true treat. The music is probably the best representation of the Star Wars themes ever on 16-bit consoles. The themes also offer great ambiance as you play through each level. Each weapon has its own unique and crisp sound effect. The basic blaster sounds are representative of the movie, and flame, homing, and plasma are satisfying to their own degree. Ion, however, sounds like you are unleashing a flurry of farts. I don't know about you, but I don't need my games to sound like a post-Taco Bell bathroom visit. The graphics in Super Star Wars are mostly a highlight of the experience. On the one end of the spectrum, you have detailed sprite work and level environments. Each character and enemy is well detailed to its movie counterpart, and it is up there with the best the SNES has to offer. On the other end, you have the vehicle levels. While the Mode 7 capabilities were incredible to see back in 1992, they don't hold up as well today. The environments are well drawn, but appear muddy once you begin to move. The gameplay also lags like crazy when the action gets going. Plus, it can be difficult to see what you need to kill at times. At least the final Death Star trench run takes us back to some wonderfully detailed sprite work for the cockpit and enemy ties to make up for the previous X-Wing segment. While the platforming and shooting found throughout Super Star Wars feels nice, there are some issues present. The first and biggest issue is collision detection. Blasters can't hurt enemies that are too close to you, which becomes a source of constant irritation as many enemies like to rush you throughout the game. The second issue is how every little hit sends your character flying from their position. This ruins certain moments of precise platforming and can cost you lives as a result. One-hit kill moments are also annoying as you progress through the Sandcrawler or Death Star detention facility. Getting dragged into a one-hit kill situation from a mouse droid never feels good. Thankfully, Super Star Wars does have a checkpoint system in place for these moments, and it works well overall. Every playthrough of Super Star Wars is the same every time you power it up. You play through each level until it is completed. The only way to change things up is to change the difficulty level in the options menu. If you find the default difficulty hard, wait until you try Jedi. Since its original release in 1992, Super Star Wars has seen a few re-releases to keep it available to modern players. The Wii Virtual Console was the first to host the game back in 2009, but sadly it never made it to the Wii U's Virtual Console. Since the closing of the Wii eShop, it is no longer available for purchase. For modern players, the game was ported to the PlayStation 4 and Vita back in 2015, and it is still available for purchase as of the time this video was made. This version of the game features save states and the option to remove any slowdowns present in the SNES original, as well as unlockable trophies. It is also playable on PS5, making it one of the easiest ways to experience the game today. Emulated versions of the SNES original are also available on services like Antstream Arcade or retro emulation hardware from @Games. Despite the random liberties taken with enemies and levels, Super Star Wars remains a game worth revisiting. The action and platforming remains solid with only the occasional gripe. Vehicle segments don't stand up as well today, but even they don't tarnish the experience to any significant degree. Thanks to selectable difficulties, the journey can also be more casual or intense. While the Star Wars name might be the main draw for players' curiosity, fans of action platformers are sure to get a good amount of enjoyment out of Super Star Wars. Thank you for making it to the end of today's review. Very fun to share my thoughts on Super Star Wars. I go back and forth on this game a lot, just depending on how my playthrough goes, and at times I've been really harsh with it, and at other times I greatly enjoy it and it's flawless. So, just a very interesting platformer, that's all I gotta say about it. And then this game also spawned 2 sequels, with Empire Strikes Back probably being one of the hardest games I ever played. Anyway, thank you so much to all of our backers for voting for Super Star Wars for this week's retro review. It's a lot of fun getting to revisit some random stuff and everything based on your votes. But here at the end, just the usual favors. If you haven't already, please be sure to hit that thumbs up, thumbs down button, depending on how much you like this review, as well as that sub button notification bell so you can see when new videos go live on the channel, as there is always more coming your way. For anyone interested in helping support the channel a little bit further and participating in the weekly retro review votes, you can also check out that join button here on YouTube or the Patreon link in the bottom right hand corner of the screen. Every little bit helps keep us going, and you get to help participate in what makes this channel go. But thank you again to all of our current backers. Couldn't do it without you. But till next time, my wonderful internet peeps, y'all stay awesome, keep on gaming, and we'll see you all back. Video.